My name is Holly Herrera, and I'm the board administrator for today's planning session, October 4th, 2023. This is a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. Madam Chair Stevens, we are ready to begin.
All right. Meeting to order, second hearing, same position. Yes, okay, let's meeting to order. And then just to start out with this announcement to attendees, this is a planning session for the board with agency staff. Attendees from the public are welcome to observe the chat function as well as the attendee cameras. Comment, please do so through the aviation website for the October 5th board meeting. And I'd also like to take a moment to welcome our new board members, Bill Bruff, Jeffrey Pritchard, and Jim Knight. Welcome to the team. It's nice to have you. It's nice to have the whole board again. So. Okay. And Holly, would you like to do roll call?
Yes, roll call. Catherine Stevens.
Present.
Sarah Lucas.
Present.
Stephen Nagy.
Present.
And then these are board designees for the record. Bill Brock,
Here, present.
Jim Knight,
Present.
and Jeffrey Pritchard.
Present.
Okay, Chair Stevens, roll call is complete.
All right, thank you very much. Well, starting us off today, we have a guest speaker, Brandy Meng, and she's going to be talking with us today about our DAS workday training requirements for board meetings.
Thank you. Good morning. For new board members, when they are appointed by the governor's office and put into Workday, they get an employee account. And you should make sure that you have an up-to-date email in there because you'll get a notification saying that you need to complete 3 required trainings within 6 months of being appointed into the board or commission. So the 3 trainings are DAS CHRO overview of boards and commissions, DAS CHRO preventing discrimination and harassment, and then the DAS EIS information security training. So each training varies in length. I believe the first 2 are about 45 minutes, and then the information security is usually about 30 to 40 minutes long. The discrimination and information security classes do have quizzes at the end that you have to pass as well in order to get marked complete. So they are all online self-paced courses that you can go into Workday at any time to access them and complete those trainings. So again, this is 3 online courses for new board members, must be completed within 6 months of being appointed. And then for current board members, you have to take the discrimination and harassment training and the information security every year throughout the duration of your appointment. And those get assigned at the 1st of January, and you have till the end of December to complete those. And then the system will give you automated reminders to remind you that you need to complete the training. So that's really all. Any questions?
Do we know if those trainings are already in our Workday accounts, or will there's a meeting or notification pushed to us when they are in there?
Can you say that again? You were cutting out.
Sorry, are the trainings already in our Workday accounts, or are they coming soon?
It depends. If you're a new board member, it's assigned automatically when your Workday account is set up. For current board and commission members, it should have been already assigned. And it's you go to the Learning app and it would show on the Learning homepage of the Learning app.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Right, thank you for bringing that update to us.
All right, thanks. Have a good day.
Okay, up next, we have another guest speaker, which is Charlie Esparza with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission to talk to us about conflicts of interest and prohibited use of office.
Hi, Charlie, you're up.
There we
Good
go.
morning,
How
you're-
are we? How are y'all? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. I was like looking around going, okay, someone give me a thumbs up or something. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick and we'll get rolling with this presentation. Let's see here. All right. And I'll be checking in just to see how everything looks on your end. How's it look on your side?
It's loading.
Okay. Well, while it's,
Oh,
go ahead.
we could see it now.
Awesome. Okay, so I just want to start off with saying thanks for taking the training. Thanks for having me here and present for you folks. You know, with Oregon Government Ethics Commission, I know it can sound to some folks kind of intimidating, but I just want to throw this out here that we're a resource. So I'm on the proactive side of things. I'm on the front end. I'm on the training to kind of help you through your careers as a public official. But that being said, our role as a public official, and can y'all see my slide that says trust right now? Can y'all see that?
Yes.
All right. So yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things about you being a public official is it is a public trust. So the Ethics Commission and the statutes in RS 244 help us stabilize that trust through our role as public officials. So what I want to say right now is, let's see if my clicker is going to work. I don't think it's going to, but let's see. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So today's presentation is going to be a big, broad overview of the statutes. We're not going to get into all the very fine bits and pieces. I always tell folks, look, today's going to be broad. If you need to look at the statutes, go review them, look at them closer. And of course, once you've taken a look at them, feel free to contact us because you can get lost in that stuff. But I also want to let y'all know that this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, so you don't want to go into court with my presentation and go, Charlie said this, because you'll just get yourself deeper in trouble. So that being said, again, we are a resource. If there's ever a time that you have a question or a concern, or you want to know what your next move is, or you need some advice, do not hesitate to reach out to us. So when I'm not giving presentations, I'm usually getting some type of email with someone asking me about a situation and what they should do next. So this is just one part of what I do. So a little bit about the Ethics Commission. We were established in 1974. We do have a 9-member staff. So I've been told we thought the Ethics Commission was like a huge group of people. No, it's just 9 of us here. We do have a 9-member commission as well. 9 volunteer citizen commission. We call them the commissioners. So we're fixing to have our executive session this Friday. So I'll be seeing all those folks, but we're a small agency and our jurisdiction pretty much is just 3 parts of ORS. And of course, my slide is kind of giving me a little bit of grief, but the first one is Oregon Government Ethics Law. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be the stuff that falls in ORS Chapter 244. So this is where we're going to see conflicts of interest, use of office, a few other things, but those are going to be the big ones today. We also have jurisdiction over lobby law, and that's for the folks that are lobbyists. And that state law requires that if you're a lobbyist, you need to register with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, as well as report your quarterly expenditures. And then this last part is a new thing for us. We just picked this up. Is public meetings law. So it used to be we just covered executive session and public meetings law, but now we have taken on public meetings law. So here's a heads up. We are not geared up and ready to go just yet. We're in the process of getting all this stuff in place to take on all the public meetings law requirements. So new for us, all new material, all new statutes. So we're trying to figure it out as we speak. So just kind of a quick overview of what we're responsible for: use of office, conflicts of interest, nepotism. We cover nepotism in the new employee trainings, gifts, and statements of economic interest. And gifts is its own separate training. And since I brought all this stuff up and we're on this page, just a heads up, we give all the trainings every month. They're available in webinars. They are free. All you have to do is go to our our website, and I'll give you that information at the end. Go to the calendar or go to training, and you'll be able to see all that stuff. And you can do that anytime you want. Pick your time, and it's usually going to be me on the other end giving that training. So before we get into all those statutes, we have to get some definitions out of the way, because we're going to see these definitions come up time and time again as we roll through these statutes. So the first one's going to be a public official. So who is a public official? So a public official is anyone who serves the state of Oregon. You serve a city, you serve the county, you serve a special district, or any other public body. And this is regardless of whether you're compensated or not. So when I hear compensated or not, I'm kind of like, wait, who's working for, state government and is not getting compensated? Well, that's going to be like volunteer firefighters, folks that volunteer at the library, Parks and Rec. Our commissioners are volunteers as well. So, or not volunteers, but they're non-compensated roles. So I'm assuming, since everyone's here in this meeting today, that you are a public official. I think that's a safe bet. I don't think anyone has wandered in and said, hey, I'd really like to take this ethics training. But just keep in mind, doesn't matter whether you're an employee or a volunteer, if you are serving the public body, you are a public official. So that's going to be the first one. You're going to hear that come up a bit. The next one's going to be relatives. And so with relatives, we all know what relatives are in real life, right? But in the statutes, it gets a little bit more specific. And so a relative, by the definition of the statutes, is your spouse, your children, your stepchildren, your daughters-in-laws, your sons-in-laws, your parents, your step-parents, your siblings, your step-siblings, and your spouse's family. Okay, so there's a whole lot of relatives that are missing from this list, right? Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma, grandpa, or some folks call them Nana. They're missing from this list. And that is right. So relatives, those folks don't count as relatives by the statute. Okay. So I do want to add 3 relatives, or what falls under a relative, in this section. So this is in addition to these. A relative by the statute's definition is anyone you have a support obligation to. Okay. Next one is anyone that's receiving benefits of your employment. That's also a relative. And last one, anyone that you may be receiving benefits from their employment. So those are the 3 additional on top of relatives. And so again, I'll kind of throw all this stuff at you in this training to just kind of tie it all together, and you'll see how relatives and non-relatives kind of come into play. So the next one is going to be household members. So household member is anyone who lives in your home. Okay, so this can be a significant other, this could be an exchange student, this could be foster children, and then you go further. This could, at this point, could be a roommate, could be cousins, could be a grandparent. So household member is anyone who lives in your home. All right, so the next one is a business. And again, we all know what a business is, but we have to define it by the statute. So a business defined as any legal entity that is operated for economic gain. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? Well, that's basically if you're self-employed, if you're a sole proprietor of a business, you have an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, a proprietorship, a franchise. Those are all businesses by the definition. So the next one is going to be a business that you are associated with. So the first example of a business which you are associated with is going to be a private business. So this is a business that you, your relative, or a member of your household is a director, an officer, owner, employee, or agent of that business. Or they own stock, equity interest, stock options, or debt instruments of $1,000 or more. Okay, so what does this mean exactly? So let's say, for example, my daughter works at the local hardware store. And let's just say it's Smith & Smith Hardware. She's a cashier. Well, guess what? My daughter is an employee of that business. So that is a business with which I am associated with. Okay, so that's how this works. So that means that any decisions I make that could affect Smith & Smith, would possibly come up as a conflict of interest. So we'll talk about that as we move along. All right, so the next associated business is going to be a publicly held corporation. So this is going to be where, again, you, a relative, or a member of your household is an officer or director of this publicly held corporation, or they own stock, equity interest, stock options, or debt instruments of $100,000 or more. So let's go back to my daughter in that example again. So she's working at Smith & Smith. It's a privately held business. It's small. It's mom and pop. But she decides to go work for Home Depot. Okay. And again, she's a cashier, but now she's at Home Depot. So she's working now for a publicly held corporation. So I'm not associated with Home Depot, or that's not a business with I'm associated with, because she is not an officer or director. She's just working the cashier, so working as a cashier. So at that point, Home Depot is not a business I'm associated with. But if she gets promoted or lands that position as an officer or director, or has stock options, equity interest of stock of $100,000 or more, so that switches things. So now Home Depot would be a business I would be associated with. All right, everybody with me so far? I know I'm probably over explaining this a little bit, but the trainings are set up to where we kind of, it's designed to meet a broad group of people. So forgive me if you've got this and I'm kind of going over it a bit too much. All right, so the next one is what a business is not. Okay, so a public body is not a business. Okay, so the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, not a business. Okay, school districts, not a business. Fire districts, not a business. If it's a public body, it's not a business. The next one is going to be a nonprofit 501c corporation. And this is one that you, a relative, or a member of your household is tied to them in an unpaid capacity. So maybe they're a board member, maybe they're a trustee. At that point, it's not a business. However, if you, again, let's say my daughter works for, let's say I'm a board member of YMCA, so not a business I'm associated with. But if my daughter is a lifeguard in the summertime, she's an employee. Well, at that point, it does become a business which I'm associated with because she's paid by them. So just remember, with nonprofits, if it's unpaid capacity, it's not a business with which you're associated with. All right. So we got those definitions out of the way. So let's go ahead and jump into conflicts of interest. So this is the harder section of them. So I like to get this one out of the way. But again, I'm gonna break this down for you. So hopefully everyone gets a good solid foundation of what this means exactly. So I'm going to throw out this example for you folks and just kind of think about it. Just take it in. I don't need an answer from you right now, but the situation here is this. You are responsible for managing vendor contracts for the agency. Your mother owns a business supply company, which may or may not put in a bid for the project. Okay, so do you have a conflict of interest? Just kind of think about that for a little bit. All right, so when it comes to conflict of interest, there's two types. There's potential and actual, okay? And so when I kind of look at these potential and actual, this is kind of like when it says actual, I'm thinking right away that any decision you would make would with certainty have a financial impact on certain individuals. And the potential, it could have a financial impact, but it's uncertain. So let's look at these a little bit closer. So actual conflict of interest is comes into play when any decision you would make as a public official would, with certainty, have some type of financial impact on you, your relatives, or a business which you or your relatives are associated with. Okay? So let me kind of, again, throw you a very simple example. Let's just say for you approve business permits. And you're in your role of approving business permits. You can approve them or deny them. Okay. Your relatives, your parents submit a business permit. You're looking at it. You know right away that you approving it or denying this is going to have some type of financial effect on your relatives and a business which they're associated with. So that is an actual conflict of interest because that decision you make would with certainty have some type of financial effect on your relative and the business with which they're associated with. Okay, so actual is the easy part. Potential is where things get a little bit more gray. So with potential, the decision, vote, or recommendation that you make could possibly affect yourself, a relative, or a business which you or yourself, you or your relative is associated with. Okay, so what does that mean? So let's say, for example, again, your role is approving business permits. You do this all day long. And your parents are thinking about starting a business. They're thinking about it. They know they're going to need to fill out a permit application, but they're waiting on the finances to land in the right spot. And when that happens, they're going to fill out a business permit. Well, because they haven't done it yet and they don't know if the finances are going to come through or not, right now it's a potential conflict of interest. Okay, so this is something that you would let your, depending on your role, you would have to make an announcement that you have parents that are thinking about submitting a business permit or even submitting a bid for a contract. So the idea here is that it's uncertain. So that's your potential conflict of interest. So to break down conflict of interest, and this is the easiest way to put it, is you as a public official taking some type of official action. So you're making a vote, a recommendation, an approval, and with that, there's some type of financial impact, either financial gain or avoidance of financial detriment. And that economic impact has to affect specific people, and that is you, your relatives, or a business which you or your relatives are associated with. So that's pretty much conflict of interest in a nutshell. So let's go back to the first slide before we got into this. So you are responsible for managing vendor contracts for the agency. Your mother owns a business supply company, which may or may not put in a bid for the project. So what do you think? Conflict of interest, yes or no? Just yell it out to me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got a conflict of interest, right? Your mom owns this business supply company. That's a business which you're associated with. Now here's the thing: is it potential or actual? You can go ahead and yell it out at me.
Actual.
Yeah, potential, right? So you know you have this conflict of interest out there floating around, but at this point in the process, she may or may not put in a bid. So that means that it's totally potential. So, man, good job. All right. So let's go one step further. So what if I'm met with a conflict of interest? Because that's the next step, right? So it depends on your role as a public official. So if you're a board member, you're a commissioner, you're an elected official, there are certain steps you need to take. If you're an employee or an appointed official, there are certain steps you need to take. And if you're a judge or a member of the Legislative Assembly, a whole nother set of steps you need to take. Today, we're just going to focus on the board members, commissioners, elected officials, and employees. So the first one's going to be if you're a board member, a commissioner, or elected official, if it's a potential conflict of interest, you must make a public announcement that you have a potential conflict of interest on each occasion this comes up before acting. Okay, so that's pretty easy. In this case, you're sitting in a meeting and you're going over bids for a specific job, and you announce, yeah, my mom has a business. She may or may not put in a bid. Boom, you're good to go. Now let's throw in an actual. So again, that same scenario where your mom puts in a bid, may or may not put in a bid, but this time she has. Okay, so again, you got to make that public announcement that yes, my mom owns a business supply company, and she has now actively put in a bid for this contract. And at this point, if it's an actual conflict of interest, you need to step out. So there's no participating in the discussion, debate, and you cannot vote either. So that's how you resolve a conflict of interest if you're a board member, commissioner, or an elected official. All right. So let's say you need to meet quorum. You need to move forward, and the vote is necessary to meet quorum. Okay, so this happens. So again, you make that public announcement, and you may not discuss or debate. So at this point, you need to meet quorum. You need to move government forward. At this point, you cannot make any discussion or debate on this, but you are allowed to step in and vote. Okay. And that's when, again, when your vote is necessary to meet quorum. All right. So let's take a look at this. And I'm going to throw this another scenario and y'all jump in and tell me what y'all think. So you are reviewing bids for roofing contractors. Your son works for one of the companies that submitted a bid, but he works in the residential division and would not be working on the agency's project. So my first question is, do you have a conflict of interest? What do you think? Just yell it out at me.
Potential.
Yeah, yes, you do have a conflict of interest, and but let's analyze this a little bit more. So you are reviewing bids for roofing contractors, right? Your son works for one of the companies, so that's a business which you're associated with, that has submitted a bid. Okay, so it's actual. So that company, that business that you're associated with has submitted a bid. So but here's my question to add on to this. Does it matter whether he works in the residential division and not on the agency's project? Is that a factor? What do you think? Yeah, no, it's still a business you're associated with. Doesn't matter what division he works in. You know, maybe he works in the warehouse, maybe he works in admin, still works for that roofing contractor, and they submitted a bid. So you have an actual conflict of interest at this point. All right. Any questions so far? Yeah, I'm hearing silence. So I'm going to take that as a no. So let's keep going. All right. So let's say you're an employee. So let's go back to that role of you're submitting business permits. Okay. So your parents submit a business permit. You're looking at it. You know that your decision you make is going to have some type of financial effect. At this point, you'd have to supply written notice to your supervisor or your manager or your director, whoever you report to. Okay. And so that's simply an email. That can be a memo, but it must be written. Okay. And so you need to describe the conflict. Hey, my parents submitted this permit, and it's my job to approve it or deny it. And you have to do this each time the conflict of interest is met. Okay. And once you do that, then it's up to the supervisor, manager, director to record that record in the official records of the public body. And then also the supervisor will need to dispose of this conflict. So they'll either assign someone else to do the task or instruct the employee on how to move forward. Okay, so that could be as simple as, don't worry about that permit, I'll approve it or deny it, or take a look at it. If it looks good, looks bad, let me know. I'll initiate it when it's done. That way we've acknowledged there was a conflict and we've disposed of it. All right, so I'm going to throw some scenarios at you. All right, your agency contracts with a consulting firm. Your spouse was recently employed by this firm but does not work on agency-related projects. Would you have a conflict of interest if a contracting matter involving the firm came before you? So this is a two-part. So is there a conflict of interest? Yes or no? Just yell at it. Okay. Is it actual or potential?
Actual.
All right. Well, so I like where you're going, but check it out. Look at that very first sentence. Your agency contracts with a consulting firm. So that's actual. Okay. So that they're in there. Okay. So yeah, you're working on, you got it. You got the conflict of interest, and this one's actual because they are actively contracting with this consulting firm that your spouse works at. Okay. So let's switch it up just a little bit. Okay. So yeah, conflict of interest. All right. So let's mix it up. Let's say this consulting firm employs your cousin. Would you have a conflict of interest?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay, so let's analyze this a little bit. So it's not your spouse that works for that business, which your spouse is a relative by the statutes, right? And because she works for that consulting firm, that's a business with which you're associated with. Okay. But if we go back to the statute's definitions, a cousin's not a relative. Okay.
Yeah.
And because your cousin's not a relative, any business that your cousin works for, you're not associated with it. Okay. So you see how the gears kind of start working a little bit, right? So here's the thing. If you want to, just on the surface, this would be, no, you wouldn't have a conflict of interest. Okay. But if we switched it up just a little bit, let's say your cousin lives with you, right? Your cousin lives, is rooming with you for the time being. Well, guess what? At that point, they're a household member. So then we have another issue again. So everybody with me so far? Yeah, conflict of interest, this stuff is can be a little bit tricky. That's why I'm here to kind of break this down for you folks. All right, so let's throw another one at you. So you are serving on a board and discussing licensing requirements for agency vendors. Your father-in-law owns a catering business that sometimes puts in bids for agency contracts. Do you have a conflict of interest when discussing this at this meeting? So what do you think? So conflict of
Yes.
interest, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Next one, potential or actual?
Potential.
Yeah, this one's potential, right? Because at this point, the board is only discussing licensing requirements, right? So there's that gray area. And then the other part is your father-in-law, he sometimes puts in bids for agency contracts. So there's, again, that gray area. So there's nothing solid there. So yeah, you definitely have a conflict of interest, but at this point, it's just potential. So good job. All right, so let's talk about use of office. So use of office is basically, as a public official, you are prohibited from using or attempting to use your official position to obtain some type of financial gain or avoidance of financial detriment. Okay. And the legal speak they put on this is if that opportunity is only available but for your holding of that official position. Okay. I kind of break this down as is this opportunity only available because of your role as a public official? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably prohibited. Okay, so what does this mean? So prohibited use of office or use of office prohibitions are come in all different shapes and sizes. Okay, so this could be something like, let's say, using your agency's vehicle to run errands during the day. Okay, so that's a use of office violation. Let's just say, for example, you're parking your RV at your agency's parking lot in the back. No one really, no one's using it. It's parked in the back. It's inside a fenced area. That would be a use of office violation because that opportunity is only available because of the position you hold. There's some more examples like taking home. So again, broad examples here. These are things that have come through to us. Taking home a leaf blower to blow the leaves on your property, and you're bringing it back on Monday morning when you come back to work. But guess what? Your opportunity for the use of that leaf blower is only available because of the position you hold. Or maybe it's a pressure washer. We've heard about folks that were taking home a pressure washer and using it for their side pressure washing business, and then bringing it back Monday morning to the office and going, hey, it's allowed because I'm a public official and I have access to this, but that's actually prohibited. That's a violation. So what kind of nulls out the use of office violations is if something is available to the general public on the same terms, then and you're not being offered this because of your official position, then it would not be a violation. So let's go into some more kind of scenarios here. But there are exceptions to prohibited use of office or use of office prohibition. So the first one is going to be your official compensation package. So right off the bat, your salary, your 401k, your health benefits are not a use of office. Those are exceptions. Anything else that your public body may give to you as part of your compensation package. So maybe if you work downtown, they allow you to park for free in the parking lot, and that's part of your role as a public official, part of your compensation. That's allowed. Okay, so things like that, you're good to go. The other one's going to be any reimbursements, and this would be for, maybe you're being reimbursed for continuing education, or reimbursed for going to a conference, or maybe you're doing some taking an additional training to get certified. So you're paying for these fees up front. You are allowed to be reimbursed with those. Again, when it comes to reimbursement, though, always check with your public body to see what's allowed and what isn't. Okay, so for example, you go out and get a parking ticket when you're out and about doing state stuff. I don't know if that's going to be reimbursed or not. Probably isn't. Okay, but that's something that, again, you'd want to double check with your public body, see what is allowed. All right, next one's going to be honorarium, and honorarium is that's given to you, something of economic value that's given to you in exchange for providing a service. So that's let's say you're a public official and you give a speech or a presentation and it's connected to an event, and afterwards they give you a plaque or maybe a certificate or maybe a gift card. Okay, that's allowed. Okay, however, honorarium is limited to $50. So again, another exception. So another one's going to be an exception is going to be a professional achievement award. So this is not an award that's an appreciation award. This is one that's going to be acknowledging your role as a professional in your field. Okay, so this could be winning the Oregon Teacher of the Year award, or maybe you won the Nobel Prize. Okay, so both of those come with some dollars, so those are allowed. Okay. The next one's going to be gifts. So you are allowed as a public official to accept gifts, but there are some restrictions. Okay, so when it comes to the accepting of gifts, you can only accept gifts up to $50 from a person or a business that has a legislative administrative interest in you as a public official. Okay, and we say legislative or administrative interest, that means that they have an economic interest in the decisions you make as a public official. So for them, if you're accepting gifts from those folks, it's $50 max in a calendar year. That's from January to December. Okay. Now here's the good part. If it's from a person or a business that has no legislative or administrative interests, then there's no limit to that. Okay, so you can accept those gifts all day long. There are 16 gift exceptions. There is a whole other gifts training that gets into most of that stuff, but just a heads up, as a public official, if you're ever given a gift, just stop and think about that for a sec. And if you have questions, reach out to us, because gifts do get people in trouble from time to time. So just taking that extra step will keep you out of trouble.
Charlotte,
Yeah,
question for you.
sure.
Public official.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Go ahead.
Gifts between public officials.
Gifts between public officials. Okay, all right. So again, we always kind of analyze the accepting of gifts from a person or a business that has a legislative or administrative interest. So if you're accepting gifts between public officials, we have to define that a little bit further. Okay, so I'll give you the basic one that we cover in gifts. Okay, so if I'm giving a gift to my director, right, he would have to watch how much he accepts from me, because guess what? I have a legislative or administrative interest in the decisions he makes. Okay, what does that mean? Well, he controls my salary, my ability to get a promotion. So I have a legislative or administrative interest in the decisions he makes. So he would have to monitor what he accepts from me in the amount of gifts. All right, so that's one step. The other one is, let's say my coworker, Stephanie, okay? We're both trainers. we can exchange gifts from each other all day long because we have no control over anything that would affect each other economically. So that legislative or administrative interest is gone at this point. So we can buy each other lunch all day long and not have an issue. Does that help you out?
Yeah, that helps out perfectly. So you're saying Steve could buy Catherine $100 bottle of wine and they don't need to worry about it.
Yes. We'd have to figure out who those people are and what roles they play.
They're
Because
both-
I don't know who these people are. So I don't know if one's a boss and one's not. So
Right here, board members.
hey. So are y'all on equal footing?
Yes.
Okay, then just on the surface, yeah, I don't think there would be an issue with that.
Can I add to that? So I'm sorry, I'm Stacy Posgate with DOJ.
Yeah,
So Steve runs the Portland airport, Catherine runs the Eugene airport, and it's entirely possible that there could be a vote that comes before this board that impacts one or the other's airport. So I think that I hear what you're saying on the surface, sure, but before Steve, you run to your wine store. I want to look at the reason why you're buying the bottle and what the decisions are that are going to come up.
yeah. Let me be perfectly honest with you when it comes to gifts. On the surface, it seems pretty easy. It seems like, okay, gifts, we know what gifts are. Okay, I can accept this, can't accept this. It sounds pretty easy, but actually gifts gets very complex very fast. It's you start peeling the layers back and it starts kind of revealing some things. So it's not as easy as, can I give this person a gift as long as it's under $50? Well, hang on, I need more information. So, the one thing we really struggle with here is raffles, because everyone's like, well, I want a raffle at this thing. And it's like, well, what was this thing? Who bought the raffle prize? How much is the raffle prize worth? Was this open to the public? And then once we start analyzing it, there's so many variables that it's not a simple yes or no. So that's why there was that hesitation of, oh, can I buy this person a present or $100 bottle of wine? My brain automatically just like locked up for a second. I was like, okay, I'm on the spot now. So, but again, the way we analyze it is first and foremost, is it a gift? By the definition of the statutes, which is basically, is it something of monetary value? Was it given to you without equivalent payment? And is it available to others on the same terms and conditions? Okay. And so if you answer those questions, then it determines whether or not it's a gift. So if it's only being offered to you and not others, and it's something of economic value and you haven't paid for it, then it's a gift. However, if it's available to everyone, if it's on the same terms and conditions, then it's not a gift. So a good example of a gift would be another scenario here. Let's say you go to a convention, the folks at the convention have a legislative or administrative interest in you, and they pull you off the side and go, hey, thanks for attending. Here's this bag of gifts we're giving out to certain individuals that are attending this conference. Okay, so that's a gift. However, if you go to a conference, this conference is open to the general public. Anyone that walks in the door gets a swag bag. At that point, it's not a gift because it's available to others on the same terms and conditions. So that's basically how we break down a gift and whether or not you can accept it. How's that?
Clarifying on that, what if that swag is only available to those who registered for the conference? So essentially, everybody who's registered to pay to be there is on equal footing.
Yeah. If the public is allowed, if this is something that the public can sign up and take, then again, we have to analyze what type of conference this is. Okay. So, is this a conference that's geared towards public officials? then, and you know, the public can register, but they're probably not going to, then we'd have to look at that conference. But if it's a conference for, let's just say, you know, a leadership conference, which anyone could join and sign up, and members of the public would be interested in going to something like this, then we'd have to evaluate it on that level too. I'm telling you, gifts are not easy. So does that help you any?
So Stacy again, isn't there an exception though for associations of which the board is a member of? That's not an issue. Isn't there something about with gifts? I could look up the statute, but I can't remember what it was. So I'd have to throw it out there because I can't remember what associations this board or agency may or may not be a member of, but sorry to bring it up, but OLCC is a really good example. And they have they are a member of the National Alcohol Board Control Association Administration, something like that. They have conferences all year round. And my understanding is that type of stuff is not considered that being given access to free access to that and your meals and all that, because there's some kind of exception for that.
You know, I'd have to get back with you on that one. Because it goes back to whether or not this would be offered to them if they were a public official or not. So it's kind of like, that's a tough one. I'd have to really follow up with you on that one, because that membership, it just on the surface, it sounds like it's tied to their official role. And they would not have access to that gift if it wasn't for that position. And maybe the folks, that membership does have maybe a legislative or administrative interest. So, I mean, a membership in an organization doesn't automatically include it or exclude it. I mean, it could be, like we had one recently where someone said, "Hey, I'm a member of my church, and my church has paid for me to attend this event, and I'm there not as a public official, but as a member of my church." And so at that point, they've separated themselves from being a public official, and they're only going as a member of their church, representing their church in that event. And so that would be something that if it was paid for by the church or that organization, then that would be something that would be allowed. But I think you're referring to one of the gift exceptions. Now it's coming back to me. But when you start getting into the example you gave me, we would have to look at that. I'd have to get back to you to give you a better answer on that one, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, I'll throw one more thing in and I stop.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm or two. Keep going.
Keep going.
Well, so what I want to do is back you up on that,
I-
because
I-
think ethics, and I will always tell you this is your counsel, is that if you ask me a question that I know that ethics, it's really their house and it's their place to answer, you can always reach out to them and ask them. And you give them, and I can help you form the right question. But if there's ever a concern, you can always reach out to them. They are great about responding to questions informally or otherwise, and everything is so incredibly fact specific. That is from my experience, and that's usually the type of counsel that I give. Work with ethics, let me help you form your question, but reach out to them because every situation can be so different.
Yeah, I mean, another example we had recently was I can't remember his role, but he was retiring, and he was retiring in like 3 months from now, and he was kind of gearing up for this retirement, and he was gifted a blanket by one of the tribes, and denying this, you know, he was like, "What do I do? This blanket's very expensive. I can't give it back to them. That would be a sign of disrespect." And so, you know, we had to sit back and analyze it, going, well, you know, you have some options. You obviously you can't return it, right? Because that would be offensive. But in this case, it was kind of like you can accept it on behalf of your agency, and that would still be allowed. Okay, so it doesn't turn into a gift for you, the individual. It turns into a gift for the public body. So that was another scenario where we're just like, wow, where do we go with this one? So in which case that would be allowed. Every scenario is so different, and there's so many little nuances to it that it's never, gifts are tricky, and you know, anytime you're offered a gift, reach out to us. I mean, worst case scenario, you can't accept it. That's that's you know, no one wants to be denied a gift, but that's kind of like, you know, as a public official, we kind of have to watch that. All right, everybody with me so far? Any more questions?
Sure, as long as, sorry, not to take up all the time. What about something that is not widely available to the public, but is available to limited amounts of the public, and you become one of those limited ones, like a pass to something that is not exclusive to you or to the body you belong with or whatever, but is also not generally like everybody in the public. It's other members of the public will have, or other people will have access to this. Say it's access to you know, an event or some other type of thing where it's like, oh, hey, let me give you these passes to this associated with that. It has value associated with it, but not everybody in the public is going to be getting that. But there are going to be, you know, the event or the organizer or the other organization is certainly giving it to a bunch of people.
So I know you're not going to like this, but I'm going to need more details. So it would be depending on the situation. So let me throw another example at you. Let's just say the Portland Trailblazers, the owner who has access to tickets gives out tickets to everybody, but he specifically gives, in this scenario, specifically gives tickets to the planning commission because they're thinking about possibly building a new stadium. Okay, and so them giving tickets to those folks that have you know, power to make those decisions, to make those go through, that would be a gift. Okay, and so they would have to limit that. But let's say, for example, Portland Trailblazers gives out free tickets to all, let's say all city employees. Okay, so at this point, it's going to really depend on your role as a public official, whether or not you can accept this. So let's say, for example, okay, you're a city employee, you're on the city planning board. Okay, so you'd have to really stop and think about whether or not you could accept this gift. Odds are you probably couldn't. But let's just say you're part of public works and you have absolutely no capacity. You work a backhoe during the day, and you've been given these tickets. You could probably accept those because there's no decision that you're going to make that's going to affect the Portland Trailblazers. So it really depends on the situation and breaking it down in more finer pieces. Does that make sense? I could throw another example that I got a call yesterday about, and it was
I have a follow-up for you on that. And so,
okay.
because I thought games specifically, like that's a no-no.
Yeah. I missed the first part of that.
It's so I thought there was an exception for sporting events that as a gift. Isn't there a no on accepting tickets to a game or something like that?
No, there's no exception for that, but now let me back up a moment. So we already know gifts are tricky, right? And so if you are given a gift or something's presented to you, you need to reach out to us. But if your public body has a more strict policy on accepting of gifts, then you would always follow that more strict option. So if your public body has a rule on no game tickets at all, that's just not good. It's not allowed. Then you would follow that. But there's nothing in the gift exceptions that specifically says sports tickets.
That's true.
No, so let me give you the example, Charlie.
Okay.
We're sitting in one. It's home to major athletic corporations. They give out passes to their employee stores. They're not exclusive. I mean, they give out, stacks of them to that, but they're not open to the general public. But if a board member or employee or whatever gets one of these passes, which only has a value when you go use it because it allows you access to this place. But those passes are given out to thousands of people. There's no conflict in that, correct? It's not
Well-
exclusive. They're not open to the public, but they're not exclusively given out to these memberships.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but we'd have to know who else are accepting or who else these passes are available to. So, members of the public, yes, but who are we talking about exactly? Is it like, can I walk up there and go, hey, I heard you're giving out these free passes, can I have one? Or if it's specific individuals that are getting this, even they may be members of the public, but who are they exactly?
So Charlie, I'll jump in on this.
Okay.
For another government body that is a fire agency. And that fire agency, every couple months, gets those passes to some of those employee stores. And they say, hey, here's some passes for all your employees.
Okay, so again, we have to figure out who else is getting this. So let's say, for example, let's just say it's a cell phone, a cell phone company, and they come to your public body and offer discounted cell phones, buy one, get one free, let's say, for example. Well, you have to sit back and take a look at it. And so, who's accepting this buy one, get one free offer? So is it someone that could possibly make a decision on whether to move all cell phone, the cell phone contract for that public body to this cell phone entity? Or is it just, again, someone that works in maintenance and doesn't have that capacity to make those decisions? And then you may also want to step back and go, okay, so who's the cell phone provider? Is it just, I know they're offering it to just us, but is it only us? Are they offering it to other public bodies? Is it offered to the public? Is it something that, is it a promotion and they're just telling us about it and including us in on it? So again, it takes that analyzing again to kind of look at it a little bit closer and see what's going on.
Make your case.
Yeah, I'm telling you, gifts are tough. Gifts are tough.
This brings into question because one of the things that we're contemplating doing is moving all of our agency cell phones over to AT&T FirstNet, which
Okay.
is a public safety. And one of the bonuses that you get with it, all the employees can sign up for discounted service for friends and family through AT&T because of that FirstNet program. That's available nationwide to anybody, all agencies that are with public safety or associated. Is that a prohibited use of office, or is that a gift if it's only available to first responders and those associated directly with those first responders?
Okay, so yeah, that would be another one that we'd have to follow up on, because we have to look at the situation that made y'all consider them as a provider. So was it something they actively came to you with? Was it something that you were seeking out cell phone providers and came across AT&T and they had an offer? So it changes things up a bit again.
Okay, it's because they have prioritization for, in case there's an emergency or anything like that, they provide better service, and then also it is cheaper. So
okay, so yeah, that's I mean, if you want to double check that, shoot us an email and we can analyze it, take a look at it. I mean, right now on the surface, it doesn't sound like it's anything that, you would only start slipping into use of office if suddenly it became, well, our public body signed on with AT&T, and since I am a public official and I'm on this plan, I'm going to go ahead and add all my relatives on the same plan. Then that might be a use of office because you're using the public body's account. So that might come into play there. But shoot us an email. We can give you a better answer on that if that helps. On the surface, doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like it would be a problem.
Okay.
Catherine, quick thing for you. Since we have so many questions on gifts,
Yeah.
should we have a separate training?
Totally
Again,
separate
it's just-
training. Totally separate
So-
training on gifts.
One question. It's Stacy again. I don't think you can see me on the screen. What's the penalty for accepting a gift? Because it seems like each and every one of the people in here could just get analysis paralysis and trying to figure out how to go day by day stuff.
Yeah.
So is there just an incredibly low risk, and I would take that into consideration as part of my decision as to whether to accept my friends and family Nike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let me get through this presentation because I actually talk about the penalties in this. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and bring this back in. I know gifts was our last slide. I've got like 10 more slides to go through. I'll try and run through these so I'm not holding y'all up anymore. But the other exception to prohibited use of office is an illegal expense trust fund. And so this is set up by public officials. It's done through us, the Ethics Commission. It is an extremely complicated process to get set up, but it is there. And it's basically a trust fund to assist in paying any legal expenses that may have been incurred to the public official while doing their official duties. Again, complicated process. I believe there's one public official that has an account with this in this expense fund, but I think it's inactive. I'm not really sure, but it's in there. So let me throw some scenarios at you. So this is going to be, again, ethics violations. This is going to be use of office. So let's take a look at, I'm going to walk you through them and then just tell me which one's the violation. So number one, using your agency's open Wi-Fi, using your agency's open Wi-Fi network on a personal device during breaks. Okay, so the next one is picking up your spouse from the airport in an agency vehicle. The third one, posting fundraising flyers in the break room that's not open to the public for the nonprofit you volunteer at. And then number four, accepting a $25 gift card for being a speaker at an event. So which one or which ones are the violations? Can y'all just yell them out to me?
Two.
Yeah, two, you got it. So the first one, if we analyze it, it's using your agency's open Wi-Fi, so it's open to everyone. Your personal device, that's fine. During your breaks, you're good to go on that one. Number two, picking up your spouse from the airport in an agency vehicle. Well, agency vehicle, agency tires, agency gas. If you're doing it on the clock, it's agency time. That goes into only available because of the position you hold. So yeah, that's the violation. Number three, you're good on that one. You're doing fundraising flyers in a break room for a nonprofit that you volunteer at. That's not going to be a concern. But we'll talk about flyers here in a little bit. And then the next one's going to be accepting a $25 gift card for being a speaker at an event. That's honorarium, not a problem there. All right, so just remember, prohibited gains is not allowed if that opportunity is only available because of the position you hold. And so it's not just obtaining a financial gain, but also avoiding that financial detriment. And even if it doesn't have a cost to result in a cost to the public body. So private employment. So this is where that use of office and conflicts of interest kind of comes back into play again. So as a public official, you are allowed to be employed by a private employer. You're also allowed to have your own business, okay? And so that's fine. You just want to make sure that there's a clear line between your role at your private employer and your role in your private business. And also, You want to make sure that you don't use your official position to create an opportunity for your side business or your business. So the way we do that is just making sure there's clear distinction between your role as a public official and your private business or your business with your employer, your job with your employer. So again, you cannot use your position to create an opportunity for that side employer or your private business. So how do you do that? So it's we kind of outline that in these steps. So the first one's going to be no governmental body time. Again, to be used with your private employer or for your private business. No governmental body resources. And this is not just the computer or the time, but it's also your coworkers as well. No official action that could financially impact your private employer or your business. No confidential information is obtained for your private employer or your private business. And the last one, if something should come up, you'll have to disclose that conflict of interest. And so I do want to add something, though, in this section is that, I think it's coming up here in the next couple slides, but when it comes to actually contracts. And so the statutes say that if you played a significant role in authorizing a contract, in a contract for, a private employer is coming over to do some work, you cannot work for that private employer under that same contract for a period of 2 years. Okay, so what does it mean by you played a significant role? So we break that down, and you've played a significant role if you've selected a contractor, if you executed the contract, if you recommended approval. Maybe you played a role in getting price list from outside vendors. Okay, so if you played a significant role, and even if you signed it, if you played a significant role, then you're prohibited from working under that same contract with that private employer. Okay, so in other words, the way I kind of look at this is, let's say you approved a contract for a big city street job, and that contractor says, hey, you played a big part in this, getting it approved, getting it signed on, the ins and outs. We'd like to hire you as a project manager for this new contract that you just signed. You would be prohibited from doing that by the statutes for a period of 2 years. Once that 2 years passes, then you can jump over and do that. So I'm going to throw some examples at you. So this is going to be use of office stuff. So you developed a close working relationship with a school vendor who has a job opening available. You contact the vendor and recommend your daughter for the job. Have you violated ethics law? True or false? What do y'all think? Just shout it out.
True.
Yeah, true. Yeah. You're using that relationship with that school vendor, right? Because of the position you hold. And also you're recommending your daughter for the job. So that's a financial gain for your relative. So yeah, that's true. So let's switch it around just a little bit. Same scenario, but let's switch it. Let's just say it's one of your family friends that you're recommending for the job. Would this be a violation? What do you think?
No, unless they live with you.
No. So by the statutes, there's the financial gain is for a family friend, right? And so that would not affect you, your relative, a member of your household, or a business which you, a relative, or a member of your household associated with. So that's how that works. All right, good job. So I'm gonna throw a couple more at you. So in addition to your role as a public official, you also own your own business. Can you promote your business by posting flyers in the agency's break room? What do you think? So yeah, this is one to get you thinking a little bit. So in here, they're saying if it's open to the general public. Okay, so let's just say I'm a volunteer firefighter. I do lawn mowing, landscaping jobs on the side. If I'm posting it in the fire department's break room and it's not accessible to the public, that would be a violation, right? I'm using my position for financial gain, right? But if there's a bulletin board in the lobby and anyone can post any flyers they want in the lobby, in that case, it would not be a violation. So as long as it's open to the general public, that would null that out. So let me throw another example at you. If we switch things around just a little bit. So let's say instead you only deliver orders, you advertise on social media, you hand out your business cards and flyers outside the office while not acting in the capacity as a public official. Would doing so violate Oregon government ethics law? So what do y'all think about that? Yeah, no, you've separated your role as a public official and you're doing this all on your own, so that would not be a violation. All right, let's take a look at this scenario. So your public body has an account, it's 15% discount at a local hardware store. While doing your personal shopping, you ask for the public body's discount. Have you violated ethics law? What do you think? Yeah, I'm seeing a big nod over there. So yeah, you have. Okay, again, that's that opportunity is only available because the position you hold, that opportunity to get that 15% discount. So yeah, you would just have to go in and pay just like the rest of us. So. All right, so again, with Oregon government ethics law, the big part in ORS 244 is going to be use of office, conflict of interest, nepotism, gifts, statements of economic interest. Remember, gifts is going to be a whole nother one, and statement of economic interest has its own standalone as well. So we'll be gearing up for that next year. But you heard me say I'm on the front end of the Ethics Commission, so I'm all about the training side and giving the advice side of things. On the complaint side, we only take signed complaints. We do not look or even consider an anonymous complaint. And so if the complaint has some concerns, it will go through a preliminary review. And if there's enough evidence to look like there was a violation, we will then seek approval through the commissioners to move forward with an investigation. So that's the only time you're going to hear from us is if someone calls and gives us a complaint or shoots an email and gives us a complaint. Okay, so with complaints, typically what happens is there's a civil penalty for the first time of up to $5,000. If it's a willful violation, the civil penalty is $10,000. And if there was some type of financial gain, there will be forfeiture of that financial gain. But the big one we give out a lot is a letter of education. And so because public officials find out, a lot of times they find out after the fact that they violated ethics law. So what do they do? What's the next thing? And there's been a complaint. So typically what we do, if it's a first time and depending on the violation, we send out a lot of letters of advice. So, or letters of education. So, but I do want to go back to us being a resource and also us helping y'all out. And it was mentioned earlier that, you can reach out to us for advice. And let me just let you know that when you do reach out to us with formal advice, you do have a level of safe harbor. Okay, so as long as you follow the advice we give you, there is going to be a level of safe harbor if a complaint is filed against you. Okay, so it's something that you could put in your back pocket. I reached out to the commission with my situation, gave them all the details, and they came back and said, these are the steps I need to follow. You can put that away in your back pocket. If a complaint was made, you can always break that out and say, look, I followed the instructions per what you've given me, and that will be taken into consideration if there was ever an investigation. So we are definitely a resource. So do not hesitate. So I heard a lot of gifts questions and a lot of stuff going from a lot of different angles. So with gifts, it's as easy as it sounds on the surface. Gifts are very, very complex and can get very, very confusing very fast. So when it comes to gifts, we always tell folks, reach out to us if you have a question or concern or you need better clarity, because we're gonna need more details. So so that being said, how do you reach out to us? There's our email. There's our phone number. We're a small agency, so there's someone here always available to answer the phones. And our website has a ton of resources as well. I encourage everyone to go to our website and take a look. There's public records. You can look at past advice we've given. You can look at past complaints and investigations that we've been involved with, as well as lobbying information, SEI information, as well as looking up additional trainings. And of course, you can always just reach out to me. There's my email, Charlie Esparza, or charles.esparza@ogec.oregon.gov. That's how you can reach me. But that's all I have. Again, hey, thanks for taking this. I wish so much that we could spend more time talking about all the different things about gifts, and but they do get very complex very, very, very fast. So that's all I have. Any questions?
All right. We may have you back to talk about gifts again, so thank you for your time.
I'll make sure to get all my notes together and a binder, and we'll just flip through and kind of analyze those. But it's always, again, the broken record here. It's always best to reach out to us with gifts questions, because again, they get very complex very, very fast. And the last thing we want is to see anyone in a violation for accepting something they shouldn't have. So.
And Charlie, you made ethics interesting, so thank you.
You're welcome. Here's the thing, man. It's so it can be very ambiguous at times, right? I mean, it's just like it's very easy to get lost. And so thank you. My job is to make this a little bit more clear, and it is a struggle sometimes. But hey, thanks for having me. That's all I have. So I'm gonna step out and stop sharing my screen. So thanks for having me.
All
Thank
right,
you, Charlie.
Thank you.
So I know
All right.
we're running just, but I know that was an important discussion. Thank you.
And Chair Stevens, my alarm just went off for the reason that your phone's are about to go off,
Yes.
and so just as a heads up.
Should we take our break?
So let's take our break, and then we can all enjoy the alarm that came onto our phones. And then shall we be back at 11:30? When does the alarm come?
In 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So we'll come back at 11:30.
We just had a.
Hey, Kristen.
Oh, is it 5:30?
It's the national sleep.
So,
11:25.
Okay,
We're
perfect.
not gonna 11:25.
This year. Well, I hope you're.
I care what There,
I have voice that I'm.
but the thing is, they're available to pretty much anybody.
Are we back?
Yes,
Great,
we're
we are back. Okay. Next on the agenda, we are going to have a presentation from Kristen Forrest about a multitude of things on our agenda. So Kristen, you want to take it over and tell us what we're going to be discussing next?
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I will take it over. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Can you see my screen?
yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the key performance measures, and I'll talk to you about our annual performance review report. And then we'll talk about the aviation best board practice survey, and then I will give you an update on the strategic planning RFP. Okay, so first, for the annual performance progress report, so this is made up of our KPMs, which are our key performance measures. And so this is a report that every state agency is required to do, and it goes through the legislatively approved process. This report is also submitted to our legislative fiscal office, the chief financial office. It goes to DAS, and it becomes part of our budget. And just actually before I jump into the KPMs, I just wanted to let you know, so every 2 years we have an opportunity to change any of our KPMs if we want to. And so the opportunity is coming up this April of 2024. So as we're going through, I kind of wanted the board to think about, you know, if we want to consider like changing any of these in the future. I'll let you know a couple of them that we can't change, but for the others, it's just something to think about as I'm going through these. So the first one is the
Slide share again. Try your slide share again. I think you're showing the wrong screen.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Can you see it now?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, where your mouse is what we're looking at.
Okay, sorry, I have 3 screens. I don't normally, so I think that's why.
Kristen, did you want me to bring up your presentation?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. Actually, I think,
Oh,
can you
There we go.
see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
um,
Okay. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so you should see the KPM number 1, the percentage of runways in good or better condition.
Yep, just a second, let me.
Well, I think we're looking at Polly's.
Say
Let
that.
me close this out, and I can't find the little arrow. Close it. Okay. There we go. You're good to go, Kristen.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Okay, so the first one is the percentage of runways in good or better condition. So this one is measuring our pavement maintenance program. So how we get the data from this is we have a PCI, which is a pavement condition index that we use in our pavement evaluation program. And so it's looking at all of the paved public use runways in the state. And so this year in 2023, 91% met the standard. So that's 82 out of the 90 public use runways met the standard. Okay, please go to the next slide, Holly.
I think you have
Oh,
control.
you have it up, Kristen.
I have control now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so number 2 is the percentage of runways that are meeting or exceeding approach surface standards.
So for this one, we are looking at the FAA Part 77.25 standards. So that requires a 20-to-1 glide slope ratio. And so this KPM is measuring all of the public use airports in the state. So it's not just the state airports, it's all of the public use airports. And so it's looking at all of those runways. And then the obstructions could be, it's basically measuring obstructions. So those could be hills or mountains, those could be trees. So I think it's important to note in this one, our percentages haven't changed too much in the last 5 years. If you can see they're between 61 to 62%. But the state does not have a lot of control over this KPM. For example, if there's hills or mountains that are in the obstruction, there's nothing we can do about that. And we're also measuring some of the airports that are not state owned. So this is a KPM that in some of our discussions with staff, it might be a good one to look at, maybe changing this or even eliminating it.
Can we interject?
Yes, absolutely.
Or Chair,
Yes.
I think this, and I think this would be definitely one of the ones we would want to look at and change or significantly change or find a different way of measuring this, because for the very reasons you just listed, ever since I've been on the board, I've been concerned about that, because there are so many things you have no control over in this KPI. Rather look at things you actually are able to influence and turn the dial on, than something that is out of control. So, yeah, whenever we get around to that, I'm a big advocate for amending or eliminating or changing this one.
And Jim has a question as well.
Can we separate state-owned from all airports so we can have a clear idea of where some of these issues are? Is that possible?
Yeah, that is possible. So what we could do, we would have to put in a change for the KPM, but we could change it to where it just measures state-owned airports. And that's another good suggestion too. That would be something we could control more. But that would be an official change through the system that we could submit in April of 2024. And then when we do submit changes, it goes through the legislative process as well. And we do have to get approval from LFO and CFO.
Sounds easy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next one is the number of public use airports inspections that are conducted. And so you'll see in 2023, in orange, it's the number of possible inspections, and in blue is the number that we did. So how we get this number is the state is required to do quarterly inspections at all of our 28 state-owned airports. So 4 times 28 is 112. And then we also do 97 FAA-sponsored inspections over every 3 years. So 97 obviously doesn't go equally into 3. So this year we did 31 out of the 31 50-10 inspections, and we did 103 out of the required 112 state-owned inspections. So that's where we got the 103 inspections completed out of the possible 143. Also on this KPM, I always note that Oahe Reservoir is a state-owned airport that is not accessible by land. And so since we don't have an airplane, we're never able to inspect that one, or very rarely. So that is 4 of those missed inspections is always every year because of Oahe. One thing I've kind of noticed about this one, my suggestion would be just a small change to help see it better would be to say the results in percentages instead of the number inspected, just because the number changes a little bit each year of possible. So if we had just the percentage that we did every year, it kind of would be a little bit easier to see how we're doing. That would be the one suggestion I had on that one. I'm sorry. Did somebody have a question on that one?
No.
Okay. So number 4 is the percentage of federal funds available that are obligated. So this one is looking at how well we're managing our federal funds. So the state owns 12 NIPIAS airports that are federally funded. And so we have 150,000 NPE, non-primary entitlement funds available for those airports each year, that we oftentimes save those up for larger projects and we can trade them among airports. So this is just making sure that we're not leaving any of those funds on the table, and we are maximizing those funds, because as you know, if we don't use those funds, they can go back to the FAA for discretionary projects, and those might not stay in Oregon. They might go to another state. Okay, so number 5 is customer service. So this KPM is actually one we can't change. So every state agency that deals with the public or customers is required to report on the KPM. And DAS gives us the questions that we're specifically supposed to ask. So it's these, at the bottom is the questions that we're asking. So for example, timeliness, the question would be, how timely is the department getting to you your information? And the customers are rating us on a scale of poor to excellent. So I know this chart is a little bit confusing because it's showing 5 different years. In green, it's showing our target, which is 91%. So in 2023, I put a percentage above what we were rated for each of the questions. So if you look at it, you can see our percentage was significantly lower this year than it has been. So we were in the range of 44 to 50% when we're normally more in the 60 to 70% range. So to give you a little bit more background on this survey, so we send this survey out to anyone who is registered to be on our email list or signed up for our email list. So we have about 6,000 people that we send it to. And we send them the email, and then we send them a follow-up email a couple weeks later to remind them to take the survey. We have a very low percentage that takes the survey. So out of those 6,000 people, only 155 took the survey. So that's about 2.5%. Since the results were so low this year, we really wanted to dig in a little bit to see what was going on, with the survey and why we did get low results this year. At the beginning of the survey, they are asked how they're associated with the Oregon Department of Aviation. And this survey, we noticed most people were putting other as the reason they were associated with us. So for those people that put other, they had the opportunity to put how they were associated with us. And so we noticed about 27%, when I calculated it, said they were Aurora neighbors or residents of Charbonneau, which is an airport near Aurora. And as we were digging into the comments, the most significant comments were residents who were concerned about the noise at Aurora and concerned about the development at Aurora. So let's see. So 27% were the Aurora neighbors. About 21% were aircraft owners, 23% pilots, 4% were airport managers, tenants and FBOs were 8%, and then another other category that I couldn't fit into the Aurora neighbors was about 17% of the survey. Okay, so KPM number 6 is the percent of aircraft that are registered. So this one is looking at our accounts receivable process. So the state registers a little over 3,500 aircraft, and our goal for registration is 90%. So you can see we did meet that goal this year. And the past 5 years, we've been looking really good on this KPM. So we raised a little over 400,000. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I think Steve has some questions.
Well, a question for Kristen, for you and for the staff. Is there any way, in order to get more accurate representation of services provided, is there any way to tie that survey to something that people mandatorily have to do? like PDX, if you want access to free Wi-Fi, you have to answer 5 questions about before you get it. You have a captive audience of 3,000 aircraft owners who have to register. Is there a form you can use or methodology you can use to tie their registration to filling out, answering the 5 questions, 1 through 10? On a scale of 1 through 10, please answer these 5 questions associated with your registration. You will get 3,000 responses, and that will give response level than 115 people who can skew it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, I think we should brainstorm some ideas to get more of a response on that survey, and that's a great idea. Some sort of incentive or tying it to something that they're already doing, registering their aircraft, or maybe even sending it out more. We just send it out, for about a month period. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's something we could definitely look into.
Another question for you from Chuck.
Chair Stevens and Christina, is there a way to break down the different types of aircraft registered? So one of the things that's coming out is uncrewed aircraft, and there are some legislative mandates for that. How many of those are part of those registrations?
What was the question?
How many of those aircraft registrations are uncrewed aircraft?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we do have a breakdown of the type of aircraft, and so I can share that with you at a next board meeting. Because in our database, we have them tracked by what type of aircraft they are. So I could get that for you. So,
Chair Stevens. And Board Member Nagy, that was perfect. I love that idea of tying it to something because we definitely need more responses. And the other thing that you might not know is there are a specific set of questions that are required that we ask. Now, one of the things that we're considering is actually adding questions, right? More qualifying questions so we can start teasing out what potential issues there might be instead of just having these standard set of questions. Just to give it a little bit more flavor and so we can understand what issues or what we're doing, what we can improve on, or where we're performing well. So we're looking at actively sort of changing that survey as well. And then coming up with brilliant ideas like Board Member Nagy, if anybody else has ideas like that, definitely love to take a look at them because there's a lot of brain power here in Real Smart. So let's figure out how to make something that really works and does the job that we really want it to do. But thank you.
okay.
Yes, go.
Thank you, Kristen.
Hey, Kristen, this is Sarah. I just have a couple of questions. One, if we have a 2.5% return rate this year, what has been the past for this survey? Do you know generally, is that kind of on par with what you have received?
Yes, that is on par with what we usually receive. Yes.
And then my second question is specific to KPM number 6. What denominator are we using to compare registrations with? Is it the FAA database?
So on this one, what we're comparing is how many active registrations we have compared to those that are expired. So we're looking at how many are in our database that we're collecting on, so that are not in collections or not expired. And in our database, we do compare that with the FAA database. And so if somebody is in the FAA database and not in ours, then we do contact them to get registered in Oregon.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we earn about $400,000 per year with aircraft registration. And so these funds are used mostly for grant match for FAA grants. Okay, let's see. Okay, so number 7 is the percent of best practices met by the board. So this was based on a board survey that I sent to the 3 board members that were current board members during September. So all of you filled that out, so thank you for doing that. So this year we achieved a score of 96% best practices met, and I'll show you the questions as well. And these questions much like Kenji was saying with the customer service questions, they're given to us by DAS. And so any agency that has a board is required to ask these questions. So this is a breakdown of the 15 questions that we asked and then the percentage for each question. So you can see for most of them, we had yeses all across the board. And then we had a couple questions where we received 67% score. So those two questions were the agency's mission and high-level goals are current and applicable, and the agency's policy option packages are aligned with the mission and goals. So obviously, you know, there was both are having to do with the goals of the agency. And so I know that, you know, one of the things that is coming up is we're talking about doing some strategic planning to make sure that our goals are new, aligned, and the board and the agency agree on those. Is there any questions about the survey?
Jim?
I'm sorry, but what is an agency policy? And what's the description policy? What's a policy option package?
Oh, okay, good question. So a policy option package, that's part of our budget. So when we develop the budget every 2 years, we come up with our policy option packages. So it's anything that we want to add to the budget. So for example, 1 year when we were trying to add a fuel tax increase for the ASAP program, that was a policy option package. And so the board helps us come up with those. And those also go through the whole legislative process and have to be approved by the legislator. And if they are, then they become part of our budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Kristen.
Thanks, Kristen.
And I had one more thing that Kenji wanted me to talk about, the RFP update. So last month, we put together a request proposal for strategic planning. So the way we did this, we were thinking that this was going to be an intermediate procurement. So you have to, for procurements, there's different levels, obviously, and so there's different requirements for each level. So we were estimating that the procurement would be between 10,000 to 150,000. So that falls into the intermediate procurement range. So it doesn't have to go through DOJ approval, and it you can do an informal procurement process. So you can just basically send out a request to at least 3 vendors with what you're looking for, and then you can review those and decide on one. So we did that, but when we got back the proposals, they were over the threshold of the intermediate procurement. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have to work with ODOT to put together a formal procurement, and that'll have to go through DOJ approval. So it's going to take a little bit longer for the procurement than we were originally planning. We'll give you an update in future board meetings as to exactly where that stands.
Kristen, how far off were those proposals from the threshold?
Some of them were really close to 150,000, and then some of them went all the way up to probably about 400,000.
And had you considered negotiating with, make a selection and negotiate them to get that price down below the threshold?
That's something that we could consider doing. Yeah, that's something that we'll just have to talk about doing.
Might be an option. If you had a vendor that you were happy with, but the threshold was above, you could potentially negotiate it down.
Yep, yeah, that's true. Is there any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay.
Good. I know we're coming up on the lunch hour, but do you want to get started with your presentation, Kenji? Or
Absolutely.
okay.
They're
Do you-
picking up lunch right now.
Oh, perfect. Do you have can you put it up?
That's right. Yes, let me go ahead and get that.
Okay.
second. Okay, and find my mouse,
On your mouse. Go.
just a second here. It's loading. Okay.
ET, huh?
It's done next.
Oh, that's great. Awesome.
Oh,
Are you sharing?
I'm about to.
Okay,
It's loading. It's,
Loading?
okay, it's up on the screen.
Great. All right. So you can go to the next page. My director's up. Oop, that's too far. There we go. Awesome. So one of the things that I get to do today is talk to you about to give you an advanced technologies update. One of the neat things that we're doing as an agency is we're applying for US DOT Smart Grant. Let me get this right. So it's a US Department of Transportation Smart Grant, which is strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation. And it's a grant program with $100 million appropriated annually for fiscal years 2022 to 2026 as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And as part of this application, we're working with the Port of Portland, Port of Olympia, Washington, the Community Air Mobility Initiative, and others. And I want to give a big shout out to the Port of Portland. Steve, thanks for the Port of Portland for agreeing to cover half the cost of the grant or the consultant that's helping us with the grant application. So big thank you to you on that as well. So next slide, please. All right. So what are we talking about? What are we applying for in the this USDOT Smart Grant? Well, one of the things we thought about was, hey, we're looking at electrifying a lot of the airports around, right? And we need to start small, start local. What's going to have the maximum amount of impact, right off the bat, and what can also benefit general aviation? So we thought, well, flight schools, right? You have one of the nation's or world's largest flight schools around in the world right here. What does this mean? There's a lot of flights in the area, right? And it creates, they're piston engine aircraft, so they're generating a lot of greenhouse gases. They use low lead or as Brad says, very low lead aviation fuel, but it's still conserved. So what we thought was that the benefits are that we could reduce all these issues and drive that sort of traditional aviation toward electrification. So it's not only good potential benefit for general aviation, but we're creating the infrastructure of advanced aviation. So we're talking about electric aircraft as well as advanced air mobility as well. And potentially it could be multimodal charging too, because you're creating that infrastructure for charging planes and eVTOLs, which is the vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, but you're also creating infrastructure that can potentially charge vehicles as well, so ground vehicles. And as I mentioned, there are reduced greenhouse gas emissions, reduction in lead, and then a potential change in noise characteristics. And to the surrounding communities, those are very important things. So next slide, please. So what's the long play on this, right? We have this, okay, we're talking about one airport. What could potentially happen in the future? The idea is to start at Hillsborough and then Olympia and create that connection and show that it's possible, right? Electric aircraft going back and forth. And then looking at that map, the idea is start to build out that infrastructure, right? Start small and then start going out. There's a stage one. So this is stage one we're talking about. And if DOT likes our idea, likes the data that we get from it, there's a larger grant that we go for stage two. That's when we start thinking about connecting east, west, north, and south, with the idea that we create an entire network of electrification. It's like your electric car, right? At first, it started in small spaces, unlike Tesla, where you just go full blast everywhere. But you have to start somewhere. And what we're talking about is creating regional connections. And that's the big bonus, because you think about the regional airports as well. You think about North Bend, you think about Medford, you think about Klamath Falls, you think about Redmond, Pendleton. how do we create regional connections in between those airports as well into our neighboring state as well? So think about Pendleton to Boise, Pendleton to Tri-Cities, and you make all these connections. You're connecting communities and you're creating economic development opportunities as well. And what's going to support all these electric aircraft as well as these regional connections? You need workforce, right? So we also started getting to the whole workforce development piece. All right, so that's sort of the USDOT SMART grant in a nutshell. That's what we're looking at. That's our big picture idea. And I'm always happy to answer questions if you're down the road. Right now, the application is due October 10th, so we are working quite rapidly with the help of the Port of Portland. So, thank you. All right, so next thing. Another big question is, how about Oak Ridge, right? What's going on? It's been on our radar. We've been trying to raise funds for it. It's been hard. So our policy advisor from the governor's office, Kelly Brooks, has been absolutely fantastic. She helped put together a tiger team, which is a specialized team looking at a specific issue and trying to figure out the solution. She made it back to DC and she had a chance to talk with the Economic Development Administration, which is the US Department of Commerce, and there's a disaster grant. Oak Ridge is in a disaster area. And originally we looked around $2 to $3 million for a pavement rehab, right? But with this grant, funding of up to $30 million is available. And which is a lot more than we thought. So the opportunity is for that disaster grant is construction or upgrading of public infrastructure, including broadband infrastructure, workforce development, including design and implementation of sectoral partnerships. And the Economic Development Administration encouraged coordinated economic development or redevelopment strategies, I mean this directly, that foster economic growth and resilience. Now, I thought, wait a second, if we're up to $30 million is available, we can turn this into a project. We can turn this into one of the most advanced GA airports on the West Coast, right? So I reached out to USDOT, Office of Science and Technology, NASA, and I will be reaching out to US Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management and see what it would require to really start bringing these advanced technologies to Oak Ridge and make it not only a place for public safety and also firefighting, but also bringing economic opportunities into Oak Ridge as well, because there's also that workforce development piece. And how we can make autonomy work in Oak Ridge as well, because they're starting to become part of firefighting. That's why NASA is so important. They have some ideas on that. So the idea is to see if we can get a grant for that much and just make Oak Ridge sun. And how we can make it an example of how future technologies can help wildfires and help with long-term economic development of an area that was hit hard during the disasters, the fires that have recently happened there. So that is the plan for Oak Ridge.
And I have a question around that, and I just want to say thank you so much for taking that on. That's a really important issue, and it was unfortunate that Oak Ridge got left behind in the last legislative session. So this work is very important for that critical firefighting airport. My question is, I know that pavement is like on its very, very last legs. I would hate to kind of wait around for the $30 million option while that pavement continues to go downhill. So is there an interim step?
Well, Tony did give you a brief update on the condition of the pavement. It was very fortunate this year. There wasn't any damage, right?
Right, there was no damage this year from extensive fire use, and I will be bringing more information about our storm priorities, which we're looking at Oak Ridge for the short term. And so to the capital points, this is envisioned as a two-step process, a runway rehabilitation, and then looking forward to potentially a different grant for,
This is all one shot.
Deal.
One deal.
all right.
And hence I sent you the email saying if you could spare some grant folks to help out with the application.
So that leads me to the question.
Mhm.
What is the viability of the big grant versus the essential grant? Do you feel like the opportunity is there regardless? Confident? I'd hate to pass up getting rehab to get the
Absolutely.
big picture.
Absolutely. And that's why we're reaching out to federal partners to get them on board, because without the federal partners that can show we're serious about it, I don't think it would go anywhere, and we go for the smaller version. But if we have that opportunity with these agencies behind us, I think there's a lot of potential. USDOT Office of Science and Technology has asked me to make a presentation in November to their interagency work group that they have going. So there is interest in Oak Ridge as well. In fact, Secretary Buttigieg knows about Oak Ridge as well. Representative Foyle is kind enough to bring that up to the secretary. So it's on people's radar, and I think there's an opportunity here.
I'd be interested in learning more about the NASA firefighting research at a future board meeting.
Absolutely. And Alex is arranging a time for us to talk down with one of the head folks at NASA. Yes.
The grant phased approach. So phase one is rehab, which sets the standards or sets the groundwork for future phases of that.
And we'll be talking with some folks at the Economic Development Administration about that. Our first priority was to just coordinate with some of the other federal agencies as well. First that, and then have that conversation with the EDA. So that's in the works as well.
What is the timeline for the grant administration?
Looking at the application process, it's continual grant process. So there's no any close date. It's a continual. Any other questions on that?
Is the program 30 million in total?
No,
Oh,
no,
that's just
it's
potentially.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. It's not, the program isn't total.
Okay.
It's a much larger funding number, but that's the maximum available for one application. It's substantial. And the match is 0 to 20%. So there's that.
Based on
Yeah.
But it's based on community.
Need and available assets available. So that's one of the conversations we'll also have with the Economic Development Administration.
What does NEPA look like under this federal agency versus that federal? You know, like I know Forest Service has a very different NEPA appearance than the FAA does. Or is that
That's got-
far enough? Okay.
Yep, that's that problem.
Yeah.
We know that NEPA could be an issue.
Right.
Yes. Chip,
Is there something the board can do to help assist in moving it forward? Is there some role for this board?
there will absolutely be a role for the board. So, of course, helping get letters of support will be big, and just helping out with the process. I'm gonna call on you, so.
Yep.
Yeah, when the time comes, and we'll ask you to pull the red levers.
Is the force, what kind of talks are you having with the Forest Service? Are they thinking about maybe locating some of their aerial firefighting resources in Oak Ridge?
Right now, it's just used as a heli base, so they chose to take over the airport right now. So we haven't had initial conversations about the specific EDA grant with the U.S. Forest Service yet. But our plan is definitely, and because you're very well connected into that system, if we can help get some assistance from you in those relationships, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is back in the 80s, they used to have a propeller base at Oak Ridge, and that has since gone away.
Those could be part of the facilities that are part of this entire funding grant as well. So one of the reason that we're having this conversation is also to scope it out, figure what's needed, what could go in, and looking at the footprint as well, what can be done.
And how is Oak Ridge City involved in this discussion?
But they will also be involved as soon as we did. As soon as we get down that pathway, we'll definitely be speaking with them, which is pretty rapid.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you bringing them on early, just because they have a better idea of the lay of the land there.
Yep.
And review.
And we have to, yeah. As many partners as we can bring on board, better it is. I agree. Thank you.
Great progress tonight. Thank you.
Yay. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. So there used to be a UAS task force. Mitch Schlecker used to run it a number of years back. That really brought together stakeholders throughout the state to talk about UAS issues, drone issues. And because of time constraints and I think staffing constraints as well, that went away. We thought it would be a good time to bring it back. In the state, because we're not only talking about drones, but we're also talking about advanced technologies, relaunching it as the Northwest Advanced Aviation Task Force. The reasons why, we need a group of both public and private sector entities to really be talking together, sharing information, and creating a clearinghouse for information. Because the more, we all know, when we get together, we can share information much better. Right. And I think that needs to happen. There has been one entity that's been folks together to talk about these issues, come up with solutions or identify problems, and see where they can be improved, whether it be statute, policy, making recommendations, figuring out what opportunities there are, identifying grants, potential grants as well. So this entity or that entity, this task force will be bringing together to just really make those have those discussions and really talk about workforce economic development and providing expertise on legislation. So if the legislature has questions, we as a task force can offer ourselves the SMEs, so subject matter experts. Because I don't think there has been enough engagement as subject matter experts on the legislative side. Anything that we can do to help that process along, I think it's great. So that's going on. Next slide, please. Workforce development is a big one, right? We all know that there's shortages of workforce. There's pilots, there's mechanics. We all know that it's been an issue. I had an opportunity at the NASAO conference, which I hope will come next year, to have great conversations with AOPA Action. And Brad was there, and Brad Schuster is one of the lobbyists from AOPA, and I saw him on the screen. He introduced me to Glenn, who was in charge of one of the folks over at the AOPA Foundation that deals with education. And we'll be working with the AOPA Foundation and Arium as well. Arium is a nonprofit that's based in Pennsylvania. And I have to start to make introductions with local folks in Oregon to that organization and really talk about how we can bring curriculums to the schools in this state. Because AOPA already has a really good program, and if we can get it out there, it's pre-made, makes it easy, and it's low hanging fruit that we can assist schools with. Another opportunity is hosting an aviation education symposium in 2024 or 2025. In order to get people talking, because there's a lot of great programs in Oregon already, right? But they're all disparate. A lot of them don't talk to each other. Some do, which is great. But we want to create a clearinghouse for information. This is the Northwest Advanced Aviation Task Force. This would be on the workforce development educational side, where we can align programs and have them share best practices. I'm leaning on you big time in this, since you know you're very well connected on this. So that's what's going on the workforce development side. So we're just kicking this off. It's in its nascent stages, but this is the plan.
So as part of this afternoon's tour, we're gonna visit actually right next door. Which is called, OA Academy, which is Oregon Aviation Careers for Everyone. It's a combined, effort from multiple sources, but just on the other side of this conference room is the Oregon International Air Show. They also have a charitable foundation that is separate from the air show. Proceeds from the air show are donated to their charitable foundation. That charitable foundation, along with the Oregon Schools Foundation, excuse me, Hillsborough Schools Foundation and PCC got together and had formulated this academy through the Hillsborough School District, have developed a curriculum for a cohort of about 50 students in each year. And the Horizon -8 is a Q400 that is, was donated out there as part of the overall program. So it's great that we're looking towards AOPO, but there's also a lot of local curriculum that has been built around, and I'm sure we've got other background in this, has been built around this, meeting Oregon standards already. And so it's great that we bring this in, but I think we should also look at some of the organic things that have been developed here in the state and see how we can foster their continued development as well, or replicating around. So I know OASIS have an interest in replicating this program in other locations as well.
Perfect.
So,
And I think that's one of the most primary things is creating an inventory that's going on as well. Because I don't think there's awareness around what's going on everywhere else.
right.
And on that note, our agency received $180,000 for the Department of Education to do a workforce development program. We're kicking off next week. Second half of the school year, we're going to be focusing on aviation. So this is very timely.
Yeah.
And hear about some of the other programs that are going on.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are the through, I would say more accredited programs that are through school districts and things like that. I think one of the things to that point also to not miss as we take inventory throughout the state is there are programs that have been around that are unrelated to school districts that are aviation workforce development. We have another one here as well, that's literally been here the better part of 30+ years. It is a non-affiliated program that has now moved into schools, and mostly in Portland, but is in elementary, middle, and high school. And their high school program is the one that is here, and they actually build an aircraft. They build a Vans kit aircraft as part of their high school project, and then sell that as well. So there are programs that are embedded in school districts, and there are programs that are supported by or supplemental to as well. Like if we inventory them, I don't think we should discount or somehow miss the other ones that are affiliated but not fully integrated.
Yeah, but River's got another good one too.
Yeah.
With the glider program and high school kids, it's impressive.
Good. It's all good information. So anything that we can do to collect this, I think is a very, very positive thing. Because we do have a lot of good programs, and if we can help push those out as well. And I think it's not an either or, it's let's see how we can bring everything together. And take model what is already in place and then supplement it for, especially for some of these smaller school districts that might not have the support or ability, just see how we can get information in. Okay. All right. Any questions, any other comments, questions on that? All right. Next. All right. So we had that KPM conversation. Kristen did a great job, by the way, if you're still on. I think we really need to look at holistic statutory rule and just think about what can be done to improve everything in terms of making recommendations to legislature to conform laws our laws, with federal laws, looking at KPMs. We've seen some of those KPMs are like, do they make sense? Not really. What can we make in terms of measuring performance of the agency in a way that's meaningful, right? What should we be held accountable for? And I think having all this experience here, and I chose, well, except for you three, you are experts in your own way, and you have your own fields of expertise. But I've been very selective in terms of what expertise that I'm bringing, and because of the insights that you have. And I think everybody's experience lends itself to what KPMs are appropriate and makes sense. Also, your expertise on administrative rules. You know how aviation works in the state. What do we need to do? How can we improve things? And then also thinking of ideas to create additional revenue for the agency. Not only from what revenue sources we have right now, but looking into the future. Start thinking about electrification. You know, how do we, because there's going to be a subsequent loss in aviation fuel tax. How do we think about that? Think about vertiports, right? All these ports all over the place. Think about drone flights all over the place. That's going to require significant resources from our agency, especially on the planning side. Where is it going to be located? Do we have to check out every single one of those places that there's a drone port or an advanced mobility vertiport? So just start thinking of that as a board to help give guidance. Yes.
That's a good one. The other one, and Catherine, business and commercial service airports are as well. Facial facial recognition technology,
AI.
AI, yeah, there's I think we all know that Oregon has a real reluctance or a real protection for personal privacy, which is a great thing. But that is running into direct conflict with where some of the conversation is going nationally on things like facial recognition technology to match for boarding of aircraft or those types of things. And so whether or not it's actual rulemaking with the legislature, there certainly needs to be a lot of information, because we could end up in a scenario where Oregon makes some rules and already has that are going to be counterproductive to the future development of commercialization of an ability for a lot of people. And I understand where it's coming from, but it's always not applicable. It has to be very closely tailored when that rulemaking is being done.
And that's definitely part of the education process, like talking with people and talking through that entire process, because there's a lot of unknowns out there. It can be scary, right? When something new comes, it's always like, oh no, wait, because there's that concern with drones. There's ways to take care of the issue. Especially with civil liberties and privacy, and rightfully so, that those are concerns. But as technology matures, and people get used to it, I think there's an element that there's an acceptance at a certain point. We just got to make sure that we're not over-regulating in the beginning in stifling innovation itself. Exactly. But what's also important, we have to take the community's point of view as well, right? And it's important to respect and take into consideration their points of view and their concerns. A prime example is, especially around airports, there's that concern about leaded aviation and such, and explaining to them there is a process that will eventually lead to getting rid of leaded aviation fuel. It might not be tomorrow, but there are concerted efforts. And what can we do together with the communities around to advance electrification that'll help take care of a lot of these issues that are of concern? And how do we, us as an agency, make that transition easy? How do we prep our airports? How do we get information out to our airports? How do we identify sources of funding? Because all the airports are rich, right? How do we look at opportunities and help the stakeholders make the right decisions? So, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and having just been a person who had to testify or not give a presentation of the work session for the local city council last night. That was 40 minutes of Q&A on that very subject. There is a lot of interest either in electeds. And again, this is just cursory type of interest in electeds in ways that would restrict aviation. You know, let's put a punitive tax on this type of operation, or can we do this or that? And we've tried to change the conversation to, can we offer incentives? Or what would be the right place to think about incentivizing the change to either electrification or to unleaded fuels or to other technologies, and make it so that the change is economically or socially beneficial for that group, individual aircraft owner group, flight school, whatever to do, as opposed to trying to penalize the way to it. So if there are incentives that we have to talk about, sometimes those would be, if you're putting in new infrastructure, is there a tax incentive in order to offset that infrastructure investment? I think those are the places where we should probably lend our voices with the legislature about incentivizing changes as opposed to being punitively regressive about trying to make the changes that way.
And I definitely think that you're on the right track. This is where the board and staff can take the lead in leading these conversations. I don't think we want another legislative session like we had last time where there were a whole slew of bills that I'm sure were very well intentioned, but there were some unintended consequences that thankfully, most of them we didn't have to deal with when we did. So I think, you know, having some outreach and education around that with our legislative body is important.
And then this sort of brings it full circle because we had that US DOT smart grant. That's part of that conversation. And that's one of the reasons that we applied for it. It's the exact same thing. How do we lead? How do we help make that transition? And then I also want to mention as well, or Alex here has been helping set up meetings with legislators. So we've been making extensive outreach to a lot of legislators, meeting them out in their home districts, which is absolutely phenomenal. I've told you, the folks here, how many times I've made it out to Eastern Oregon to buy Hermiston watermelons and go see Rep. Smith at the same time. But
Is that a conflict of interest?
Only $40. Or is it up $50 water?
Yep, no, didn't get any free watermelons. But
So I'm gonna do a time check, because I think we're at almost 12:30. We've got to hit our executive session at 1:30, right? So should we break for lunch and then maybe continue the conversation?
guess what? Next slide. That was
There
it.
we go. Okay, perfect.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I think really, helping collectively is more second priority for especially in light of, I love the fact, I love the attention to infrastructure and focus and thinking differently about our infrastructure and how we position in states and to be on the creative edge of where technology and where the federal government and others are going and taking advantage of that for grants and for funding and for bringing jobs and opportunities here. That's one great element, but I feel like historically, one of the things that can always be done, and this is a tiny agency, but can always be done better, is to gain the legislature's attention on what is applicable right now from aviation, but also like, where do we not put ourselves in a hole someplace in the future by, let us help you craft a good legislative set of priorities for this industry.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Oregon's going to be on the back foot compared to other places. Again,
And that's the thing is we're looking for solutions that not only help new entrants, but can also benefit traditional aviation as it is. And that's where the key is, because we want to support what we have and support what's coming down the road and looking forward. And that's one of the reasons that we're looking to spend money in that strategic plan, because it's such an important piece of the puzzle in getting feedback from all the stakeholders across the aviation in Oregon, as well as communities
Do we need to close out this meeting? And break for lunch and then come back to executive session, or can we come back for more discussion on this?
We can come back if you'd like.
Okay. Great. Well, so let's break for lunch. Maybe we'll make our lunch officially a half an hour, if that works for folks. We can come back at one, have some additional discussion. I know we've got a couple more items on the agenda before we get into the executive session. All right.
Thank you.
The food items have what they are written on them, so hopefully everybody knows what they got. Well,
1 o'clock, we will come back to the session.
Let's have that conversation. Yeah, figure out what we should do.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, so I think, the item we have ahead of the executive session at 1:30 is the 2024 objectives for the board and ODAB. And then just also a note about the Oregon Airport Management Association Fall Conference in Newport coming up this next weekend, Sunday through Tuesday, August 8th through the 10th. And Kenji, did we have more to discuss on the objectives for the board and ODAB should be report?
I think we actually covered a lot of it. If the board is so inclined, the sort of ODAF program and the state rules. We can do that, and then as well as the inventory of programs, workforce development / educational programs in the state. I think would be a good goal to do for 2024 as well. And then, of course, whatever the board's prerogative is.
Right, are there any other objectives for the board that any members would like to bring up at this time?
Thanks, Manager. I was wondering if we could add back in another update on the recent policies and procedures, since we're doing a pretty substantive revamp of that. So we had an update in May of last year. We could have kind of a mid-year checkup on what progress has happened in the last 12 months.
Exciting.
So are you thinking to target that for May again then?
Mayor, if staff has a recommendation of when it would be more conducive to your schedules.
We can look at the agenda, future work session, we'll be going through the whole.
So sometime around May.
Yeah, so let's just target, I think that's probably a good annual check-in that we can have that, so we'll get that on the agenda. Any other?
I'm not familiar with where the strategic plan lies with regards to emergency preparation and response. Both really starting with our state-owned airports. But in general, I know that Betty's been doing a lot of work to try to emphasize emergency preparedness. And I'm curious to where does that stand within the strategic plan? Is that something that's already been addressed? And if not, I'm sure would like to do that. Okay.
And then on that note, of course, Betty has a report. Has been writing the report, and we do the legislature at the end of this year. And then that'll tie directly into our strategic plan process as well. So that'll inform part of it.
And I'm unfortunately very aware of the coastal ports and the dilemmas that they have. And really would like to see if there's opportunities to try to boost our ability to provide additional, really it's money, it's financial support. But beyond that, it is, trying to establish what is the criteria, what should an airport have in preparation for emergencies, whether it's staff or facilities or equipment. But I would look that there's at least a minimum goal for each of the airports to be able to say, we're as well prepared as we can be with the resources that we have. I just don't know that we've developed what those resources really need to be.
And the report does speak to that. So fortunately, there's an inventory of what should be at the airports as well. So Betty's been working on that extensively.
Do we have a timeline on that, Kenji? Do we know when she'll be bringing that back for review? I know the report is supposed to be for the legislature, but I think some more should be able to review that before it heads back to the legislature.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a firm yes.
Because I think that report was supposed to be done by the end of the year, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So next, I'm wondering, when's the next board meeting?
November 2nd.
Yeah, so we'll have that on the agenda.
Question for.
Betty's report, resiliency report.
Yes, that's on the agenda
Yep.
for the draft.
Yep, for the grant. Okay, so
And when is it presented to the legislature?
that's legislative days. Is Betty on the call? Because she can give a firm date.
Betty is on the call. Yes.
Betty.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. So it will go to 3 legislative committees in the January legislators, mid-January. And then you will see it actually at your December board meeting. But Jim asked, answering your question, yes, that's what I'm working on right now is facility needs, inventory, and is done. And right now that's what I'm working on, what individual airports are going to need based on their locations and what their roles are going to be.
Thank you, Betty.
Other board objectives or other topics you'd like to see as a work session? I know we don't have too many listed on here, Kenji, so I don't know if you had some other priorities. It sounds like we've got Betty's presentation in December. We've got other things coming up that.
The rulemakings, they're a little bit delayed, because we looked into it a little bit deeper. It looks like there needs to be a statutory change, one of them, rather than just a rule change. And then, did you want to mention anything about the DVD status or what's going on?
Yeah, so we're still working on finishing touches for the driver's training program, and we are still going to be bringing the rulemaking that we had started for VPD mitigation at the Aurora State Airport, and we're going to bring that to the board for a future vote. And looking at, I'm hoping for December of this year, and to coincide with the implementation of the driver's training program.
I don't have the agenda, but I have a question as a newbie. So, several of you go to aviation conferences because it's part of the, not part of the regular. I go to education conferences because that's where I am. But if we want to go as a board or as a board member to the aviation to see, to learn more, to get more engaged with other things are going on in this conference, is that, how do we do that? How does that work?
I think that's a budgetary question, right?
So it's a budgetary question. I'd like to talk with Kristen about, because I definitely like to bring folks to some conferences, at least once in their tenure, just to be able to get folks an experience of meeting a lot of our constituents as well as that. So it's just a matter of working out with Kristen and chatting with her.
So for example, in education school boards, and things, we go to the local regional state conferences on the one national conference. That's kind of again to stay current, to stay educated, things like that. So I'm just bringing it, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think there's, a couple of us that are just.
Yeah, you go
to
to your day job.
anyway,
So
yeah.
think about it. Could be something different, so just to stay current, see where the world's going.
And we did, when I was on the board of travel Oregon, when I was a commissioner, we did the same thing. So yeah, for me, it's not a phone contact.
I think it helps the board, and even we'd have one conference that we do it together. Talk, we mentioned something.
We'll take you on a road trip to Hawaii.
Oh, you name it, right? Omaha. Whatever. Just, right. Just,
James Lab, said road trip.
road trip. For me, road trip still means the same thing. We're in planes all the time. But, yeah, I just think that's just sort of.
They've mentioned for years that they're wanting to bring it back.
And we still don't have an answer on the FAA bringing back their regional conference yet, but I can tell you they are discussing it. But also the Northwest chapter of AAA, American Association of Airport Executives, is looking at taking on that conference and just kind of doing it for the FAA so that they don't have to exert so much energy in trying to plan a conference, but they can just show up. It likely would be held in Seattle, so just be there without having to travel restrictions.
That makes a lot of sense because AV side does the same thing for the FAA. The organization, the Association for Uncrewed Vehicle Systems International, pulls together, puts on the event, and all the FAA shows up. So it's not about precedent.
Yeah, if I were to guess, I would think that's the way this is gonna go, just because it is so much easier for the FAA, and we can have it annually then instead of the every other year conference that the FAA have been trying to hold pre-pandemic.
And I think that's a staff recommendation of the rest of regional aviation-based counters, so that we can just go to just on our own. You know, maybe register as a board member, but just go on our own to would be.
And we also have access to webinars as well. We can pass on those
The
things.
same, like the kind of thing to keep the board educated on it. I think we're going.
I know you're a nerd. Got it.
No, you had mentioned, I think that is really great. Catherine's right, many of us go to a lot of local or national conferences. Many of those are focused locally, they're focused on national issues. And you mentioned just coming back from the SAO, that's probably the one part of aviation that I am the least familiar with. It's like, what do state to state conversations sound like? So preferentially myself, I'd like to participate and understand that because we go to a lot of conferences at the federal level where we're advocating individually for ourselves or for groups that we belong to, and we do it locally. Like the state to state conversation is one that I've never really been familiar with. So like, how do we partner as a block, say at the Northwest or Oregon and Washington and others to move forward some of these ideas on electrification? It'd be great to understand how we build some of those relationships too.
Perfect. And that's a great segue because I am now the regional representative for NASAO as well. So I can kind of make those.
Did you raise your hand? Is that what happened?
Of course I did. And then I think it's a great idea to take you to some of these, especially the national ones. Then you can really see how different it is and how they're the different interactions. But I think what we as a state agency and as a board really need to do is make those regional connections because it's a much larger conversation than just Oregon itself. That regional and national, the more communication that we have, sharing of ideas, I think the better we all are as a state. So as an agency and as an industry sector as well.
It works great for school boards, especially as smaller school districts. We go to the national, get to go to the national school board conference, and it's just wow. Okay, lots of good stuff here. We're really moving. Good.
Kristen, check the budget. So
Okay,
great ideas. Thank you.
any other topics for discussion? I know we've got to do a little switch over for the executive session, so I'm bringing time to get that done. I did have one question for you on something you talked about earlier. So the one airport that we own that we can't get to by driving, have you thought about using your drone to do an inspection by a drone?
I could.
Wonderful.
I could, but we were hoping to do a work party out there.
Well, that would be good too. Yeah.
Yes, and we'd get there by boat.
Really?
We were hoping to do it this fall, but we just ran out of time. Hawaii?
Oh.
Yes, we could bring board members along too,
Mhm.
with a shovel. With a shovel,
Yeah, as long as you put us to work. right?
and there's rattlesnakes out there. Sarah's like, yes. So, yeah, we'll see if we can arrange something, a work party next year, so,
I raised a point about the grant that you were talking about,
yes.
for the infrastructure grant. That we learned from the school district's point of view, that area, that they got affected by wildfire tremendously, but they also got hit by a 4.5 to 5 foot blizzard. And there's only one road into there, and we were shuttling supplies into them for 5 days when we were there. Only because we could get supplies into the land. So, but they were completely shut off for 7 days, 5 days. They couldn't open up the gate.
Was that when the Amtrak train got stuck there too?
Yeah, that's it. It was a massive snowstorm. There's only one road in there. So,
Yep, Highway 58.
yeah, that's also something.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I think we will close this meeting out so we can set up for the executive session. Yes?
One of the priorities I spoke of is, we talked a little bit about, but the resiliency, not just the fact of physical resiliency, but we also making sure that that includes climate resiliency. Well, it's gonna,
Yes.
and that's, when we talk about resiliency as our organization, we need both things now. Natural disaster as well as the changing climate.
Yep.
We've made some business decisions based on those changes.
Just got one other item that's come up today was that if there's going to be a serious transition away from fossil fuels to electric, but how will we prepare the organization for the loss of the revenue that we experience? It's not too soon to start developing the strategy. How will we replace somewhere nearly almost $500,000 a year tax revenue. So
We're gonna put told this or each end of the rainbow.
Good one, Bill. But yeah, what's fortunate is we should think about it, but it's also a conversation that's happening at a national level because we're not in isolation. So I mean, among all the 50 states plus all the territories, it's a conversation that's happening. So if we come up with a good solution, we can spread it around. So let's put our thinking caps on and be the folks for us.
almost, yeah,
Oh,
virtual toll booth.
All right, with that, I'm gonna close out this session and we'll take a pause for a minute when you guys get the executive session set up.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair Stevens. This meeting has been adjourned and the recording is now stopped.